I'm here because I am a roaring lion crying out righteousness. I want to today do something just a little bit different. I'm going to read the court brief and complaint that we filed on yesterday in the U.S. Federal Court on Foley Square. I'm going to go through that today in terms of its totality and details, and I'm going to let that serve as the sermon for today. And it's a sermon of its own, but not in our general sense. However, I do want to acknowledge our tradition of reading the scriptures by reading from the book of Joel, and chapter 2 of the book of Joel, verse 1. There's a lot in this chapter that corresponds with a large number of things that are happening, including Sabbath celebration song, and our journey. But just to get us launched and biblically anchored for the critics that come along from time to time, whether or not we are preaching God's word, we're going to use Joel's statement in Joel chapter 2, verse 1, that reads, "Blow the trumpet in Zion and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand." And so we have the reading. What I'd like to be able to do today is using the subject matter of the Pastor Manning files a $23 million lawsuit against the Mellon Bank and against the city of New York, Mayor Eric Adams, and others that we will read from the complaint in just a moment. But let me explain to you why Pastor Manning, rather than the ATLAH Church, is filing this complaint. First of all, it's a private and personal complaint that my civil rights personally have been violated by the Mellon Bank and by all the parties that are listed as defendants, including the city of New York, that my civil rights have been grievously violated. And so rather than filing a complaint on behalf of the ATLAH Church, which would require us to have an attorney, I'm filing on behalf of myself in terms of the complaint, which allows me to prosecute the case as pro se, that I will stand as a lawyer in the federal courts before the jury and the defendants, explaining why the civil rights case is being brought against the Mellon Bank and against the city of New York. And so I wanted to make that clear so none would fail to understand what we're attempting here to do. There's yet another legal reason why I have not sought after, two other reasons rather. I've not sought after to do this on behalf of the Bethel Community Church or the ATLAH Church. Number one is that I just don't have any trust in lawyers anymore. I just don't. It appears that the interest of someone such as myself and our church is minute compared to what the Mellon Bank or the city of New York could offer a lawyer in terms of his profession, career, or monies to sell me out, that I don't have anything equal to offer them. And so they would sell me out in terms of not doing the appropriate thing that needs to happen on behalf of our case. I plan not to sell myself out, nor to sell you out, so I'm going to prosecute this case myself before the federal court. The other reason, of course, a legal reason why I am prosecuting this case is because if I prosecute it on behalf of Bethelite, the lawyers could throw up a lot of smokescreen, be irrelevant, but it would be a smokescreen. And the jury might not be able to delineate what's true and what's not. The defendants, rather, would throw up the smokescreen that this case has already been litigated in the state court of New York. And they would point to various things that I'm going to say that would mean that the case has already been litigated, so it should be dismissed on the basis that the state courts have already ruled and the federal courts have no jurisdiction in that regard. I took careful pains in writing this brief to make sure that nothing that was in the state court that's already been ruled by a state court judge would be affected in this particular brief that I have filed. So it's those reasons that I'm prosecuting this case as pro se, and why it's personally for me and not for the church. And you'll understand when I get into the meat, if you will, of the case, why it represents us in totality. I'm going to ask the engineer if he will bring up the cover page, the complaint page, cover page that we have put together. As you can see, it's in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. James Manning is plaintiff, and the city of New York as defendants. The city of New York, Mayor Eric Adams, Department of Environmental Protection, Rohit Agrawala, Commissioner of the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, New York City Department of Finance, Preston Eblick, Commissioner for the City of New York, Department of Finance, the Bank of New York, Mellon Bank, Robin Vance, President of the Bank of New York, and MTAG, a servicing company, LLC, the New York City TL, or New York City Tag 1998-2, the president of that organization. I'm not sure what his or her name is at present. We have been privileged by the court to just list them as John Doe. Now, we filed this brief on yesterday at Foley Square here in New York City in the Southern District. And that we don't have our index number as of yet. We should have an index number or docket number by early Tuesday as this court case moves forward. We also applied for a waiver of fee so that the marshals for the United States federal court, that the marshals will serve the summons upon Mayor Adams, that I would not be tasked with the responsibility of serving the summons as it would be with a state court summons. The U.S. Marshals are going to serve both Mayor Eric Adams, President Robert Vance of the Mellon Bank, and others are going to get a knock on their door from the U.S. Marshals. And we believe that this case is a slam dunk in terms of the things that we have alleged and that are true regarding my civil rights have been grievously violated by this action that started some 20 years ago. I'm going to ask if the engineer would bring up also page 1 and scroll down to the segment that says the complaint. Thank you very much. I'm going to read, and this is the filing, and I'm going to be reading for a while. Now comes James Manning, pastor of the 65-year-old Bethelite Community Baptist Church in Harlem, New York, seeking relief from 22 years of discrimination, denial of freedom of speech, denial of religious liberty and freedom, and an assortment of New York City Police Department documented hate crimes denying religious liberty and due process generated, Mr. Engineer, by a discriminatory, predatory, and unjust tax lien sale against the 65-year-old 501c3 federal statute of tax exemption, Bethelite Community Baptist Church in Harlem, New York. And I've written the discriminatory, predatory, unjust tax lien was filed against the Bethelite Community Baptist Church for water and sewer taxes in 2002 for $36,000. The amount has now mushroomed via 18% interest to $3.4 million. And the church has been sold at auction by the New York State Supreme Court Justice Francis A. Kahn III. Mr. Engineer, for just a moment, we were also scheduled to appear in court before Judge Kahn on yesterday regarding a hearing date or a scheduled date for the auction and sale of this church. We filed a cross motion personally because we don't have an attorney, that hearing be, or at least the opportunity for us to get an attorney will be given the privilege to us. Well, Elder LaFleur and I, my trusty assistant attorney, made it down early yesterday morning to the Supreme Court at 60 Center Street, and we sat in the courtroom where we thought the proceeding would go forward, in room 130 at 60 Center Street. We sat there for a while, and the clerk came up and read the cases that were to be heard, and then looked at us and said, "Why are y'all sitting here? Because there's no case for you." We then explained why we were there. They said, no, Judge Kahn is over on 100, over at 111, I think, Center Street. We raced over there because the 9:30 hour had fallen, cases had been called, and we thought we were going to be late and the case would be either dismissed or we would be in default. We rushed over to 111 Center Street up to the 11th floor, and we made it to Judge Kahn's courtroom. And on big sign on the door said Justice Kahn Courtroom, foreclosures, and all kinds of other things going on with respect to the foreclosure proceedings. But the courtroom was dark and locked tight. We tried to get in, we could not. Elder LaFleur inquired of some other clerk about what was going on. They said, no, Judge Kahn is back over at 60 Center Street. We raced back over there. Now I have to tell you, I'm not in the best of shape, so running up and down the street was not a pleasant ordeal on yesterday. We get back to 60 Center Street and we hear that Judge Kahn is not even in office today. And that we were probably, because we filed a cross motion, not e-filing, but we filed personally a cross motion a week ago, that we would hear by email or by the process that the court uses to inform you of decisions reached by the court as to what will be our dilemma. So I don't know what happened to Judge Kahn yesterday. Perhaps he was celebrating St. Patrick's Day, or perhaps he was on vacation, or perhaps he just didn't want to face me. I don't know. I'm not saying that's the case. But he certainly wasn't there yesterday. So we are in limbo about what's going to happen with that case. But notwithstanding, this case supersedes that particular case. And I thought I would give some answer, because some have asked the question, what's going to happen now if the judge courtroom was closed and no explanation was given? Mr. Engineer, if we could go back to page 2, paragraph 2. Item number 2. This discriminatory, predatory, unjust tax lien was filed against the Bethelite Community Baptist Church for water and sewer taxes in 2002 for $36,000. The amount has now mushroomed via 18% interest to $3.4 million, and the church property has been ordered sold at auction by the New York State Supreme Court Justice Francis A. Kahn III. As layman, pro se, I, James Manning, now come. I prayerfully seek the protection of the Constitution of the United States and the long overdue justice from this honorable court. The named defendants deprived me of my civil rights in violation of the United States Constitution, specifically 42 U.S. Code of 1983 and all other protective, supportive, and codes and statutes. And by that I mean, I don't know the law, I don't practice law, and I don't know civil rights laws, but what other statutes that would apply that would help me, I'm pleading that the court would afford me those without me having the skills of an attorney to state those statutes. That's what that means. This honorable court has jurisdiction beyond this because this matter involves questions of federal law of 28 U.S.C. 1331. The Southern District of New York is the correct venue because the unlawful practices outlined in this complaint occurred in the state in this judicial district. Again, I, James Manning, have suffered mental anguish, spiritual torment, high blood pressure, heavy drinking, and vomiting in the morning of the day I had to appear in court. And I've appeared in court last year several days, and over the years, the appearance has not been pleasant. I demand a trial by jury on all issues. I'm seeking $23 million from the city of New York for violation of my civil rights. I'm also seeking $23 million separately from the Bank of New York Mellon Bank and the New York NYC 1988-2 trust, $1 million also from them. $1 million for each year for the violation of my civil rights. I'm asking for 18% interest starting at 2002 of the date they purchased the lien from the New York City Department of Finance. Please see exhibits declaring and affirming the New York City tax lien law was and is discriminatory, predatory, and unjust for many black and brown people. The public official statement. Now, I was able to do research. Many mornings during my prayer hour, I would research when I was quiet and my mind was clear. I searched Google and other places for issues regarding this tax lien law that was put in place by, I think, Mayor Giuliani when he first came to power. And I was able to discover 5 articles condemning this tax lien law as unjust. I'm not just saying that it is. Predatory, stated by the Mayor of New York, the Attorney General of the State of New York, the City Council President of the City of New York, and others have stated that this tax lien law that was sold against us is discriminatory. It is predatory, it's unjust, and it's unfair. And during that prayer hour, praise God, he showed me several articles that we pulled up. Now I'm going to read those articles to you in the order in which I found them. I put this part of the brief as public official statement. According to the City Limits article, now this is a news item, small newspaper, the City Limits, entitled New York Attorney General Calls on New York City to Halt and Reform Tax Lien Sales by David Brand, published on the 27th of October in the year 2021. And I quote, Letitia James calls for major reforms to the arrangement that would address the racial disparities that have long since existed in the program. COVID-19 may have exacerbated the impact of the lien sale on our vulnerable communities, but it did not create them. And 2021 will not be the only year when the lien sales causes significant harm to our families and communities, unquote, said Letitia James, the Attorney General of the State of New York. According to another news outlet called the Gotham Gazette, I quote, a majority of City Council declares opposition to reauthorizing the New York City tax lien sale by Samar Khurshid, published on the 31st of May in the year 2022. There's a broad, and I quote, there's broad support for replacing the tax lien sale program. Both Mayor Adams and Speaker Adrian Adams have criticized it, though the Speaker was not among the signatories of the letter. The mayor, during his campaign for office of City Hall last year, called for eliminating the program. There's enough evidence that the annual lien sale has not been a just or an effective debt collection program, unquote. His housing program reads, and I quote, a real recovery is not balanced on the backs of generational wealth in black and brown communities. Our focus should be on reinvesting in historically marginalized communities, and there are a number of promising models we will consider to replace the lien sale and to do just that, unquote. Our James Manning would like to see the court documents mentioned by Mayor Adams ruling that the tax lien law is unfair. According to the City Limits, another small news outlet, New York Attorney General calls on New York City to halt and reform the tax lien sales by David Brand, again published on the 27th of October, the year 2021. And I quote, Adrian Adams, one of the task force members, said the extension should allow the city to reform the current system while exploring a different model. Again, I quote, I don't think it's any secret that the majority of us don't want this tax lien sale, but we're trying to accommodate reasonable reform, unquote, she said. I, James Manning, have suffered years of mental anguish, spiritual torment, high blood pressure, heavy drinking, and vomiting. In the morning of the day I had to appear in court. The City Council President went on to say that the tax lien law, according to the City Limits, another small outlet, quoting New York Attorney General Letitia James, calls on New York City to halt the reform tax lien sale. Now, this is a repeat, and it's important to continue to repeat these items. Published by David Brand on the 27th of October, year 2021. The task force long-term goal remains a tax lien overhaul to ensure New York City small property owners maintain their homes, she added. This is a Giuliani-esque stuff, and we want to create real reforms. Adams said of the current system, that's the current City Council President, Adrian Adams, said, New York City doesn't want people to lose their homes for not paying their water bills. According to the Gotham Gazette, another small news outlet, majority of City Council members declares opposition to reauthorizing the New York City tax lien sale by Shamar Khurshid, which I read just a few moments ago. In a letter to Mayor Eric Adams being sent on Tuesday, 31 members of the 51-seat City Council are expressing opposition to reauthorizing the tax lien program in favor of a more equitable alternatives. Yet the City of New York allowed the Bethelite Community Baptist Church court foreclosures to continue during the period they have found the law discriminatory. The Department of Environmental Protection has now moved to provide options for those who owe water and sewer bills to repay their debts instead of selling their water and sewer tax liens. According to the city limits, titled New York Attorney General calls on New York City to halt and reform. We've just gone through that. The mayor's office said there are 40% fewer homes at risk of tax lien or water bill sales than in previous years. Class 1 properties, Class 1 properties with water debt are not eligible for their lien sale, and the Department of Environmental Protection has suspended all properties with outstanding debts from December's bill sale. Debts on roughly 10,000 properties with tax liens are still eligible for sale in December, including more than 3,300 Class 1 properties, according to borough's listing on the Department of Finance website, and it's a quote, unquote. According to the Center for the New York City Neighborhoods article, New York tax lien sales for December 17, 2021, by the Center for New York City Neighborhoods, published on April the 1st, 2020, the Department of Environmental Protection will not be participating in the 2021 lien sales, meaning that the water and sewer debt owed to the Department of Environmental Protection will not be sold this year. This action and lien sale in 2002 by the Department of Environmental Protection and the Department of Finance against the ATLAH Church was a water and sewer tax lien. And let me just explain. The Department of Environmental Protection have now just written off selling liens anymore. They said it's just unjust, and they're not going to do it anymore. But yet they're continuing to pursue us. But these are all statements made by city officials. The background is a style in which we try to make our point clear to the court and to the jury, should we be able to reach that far. And I believe that we will. Explains this, Mr. Engineer, page 5. The Bethelite Community Baptist Church is a 65-year-old 501c3 organization founded by World War II veteran Millard Alexander Stanley. The church and Pastor Manning have established a K through 12 grade Christian school with over 500 graduates, many of them accepted at Yale, Juilliard, New York University, Cardozo Law School, New York Law School, Fordham University, and St. John's University undergraduate and doctoral programs. The church has had a homeless shelter for 39 years, a children's breakfast program, and has served more than 1 million meals to hungry bellies in the Harlem community for years. Neither the Bethelite Community Baptist Church nor the ATLAH Ministry received any government funds or finances or any other support. The ATLAH Church employs 15 people and has an enrollment of 50 students. The building contains a pastor's residence, a homeless shelter, an apartment for a church school teacher, and an apartment for a second church school teacher and building superintendent. The teachers and building superintendent apartments are the apartments the city has charged taxes. The building, since its purchase in 1984, has maintained a 501c3 federal tax exemption, a New York State tax exemption, and a New York City tax exemption. In the year 2002, the New York City Department of Environmental Protection and the New York City Department of Finance filed a $36,000 lien sale to the Bank of New York Mellon Bank, and against the 65-year-old 501c3 ATLAH Community Baptist Church in Harlem, New York. I, James Manning, have fought this injustice in the New York Supreme Court for 22 years. The $36,000 has mushroomed via 18% interest over 22 years to $3.4 million. The Mellon Bank has been granted summary judgment, foreclosure, and legal authority to auction the church property immediately. In this segment on page 5, I list hate crimes and my denial of freedom of speech, and you'll understand that as I go forward. But the hate crimes and denial of freedom of speech generated by public knowledge of the foreclosure. The New York Supreme Court Judge Barbara Jaffe was assigned to rule on this case in 2016. When she learned it was the ATLAH Community Baptist Church in Harlem, the church of Pastor James Manning, she recused herself. Her reason for recusing was she had donated money to a local community housing for runaway LGBTQ youth who had publicly declared Pastor Manning a hate preacher. ATLAH and ATLAH explain. Now you'll understand this in just a moment. In items pages 7 through 20, we give an outline of why ATLAH and ATLAH are interchanged and why the hatred that has been leveled against me and ATLAH are the same as hatred leveled against ATLAH and stemming or generated because of the foreclosure. Mr. Engineer, page 7. The ATLAH Community Baptist Church, founded in 1957 by World War II veteran Reverend Millet Alexander Stanley, is the owner of the property and the 501c3 tax exemption. The ATLAH Community Baptist Church has founded many ministries, schools and media platforms. One of the larger and better known of the ministries is the ATLAH Evangelism Ministry and the ATLAH High School. From this point forward, you will see numerous assaults against Pastor Manning because he is well known from the ATLAH platform. However, ATLAH is the anchor of ATLAH. You will see the Mellon Bank has sued both ATLAH and ATLAH. However, it is Pastor Manning that the hatred and torture is aimed at. Please see following court documents the hate mail and death threats against Pastor Manning associated with ATLAH. For those who are just logging on, we are reading the brief that was filed this past Friday on the 17th of March at the U.S. Federal Court in the Southern District here in New York City, stating clearly that my civil rights have been violated by the Mellon Bank, by the city of New York, and we're asking for, from each person that's a defendant, $23 million or $1 million for each year of my suffering. And I'm reading a portion of the brief, and I'm on page 8. The total number of pages are 55, so we got a little ways to go. If you will look at page number 8, it simply points out the most recent filing and notice of motion for an order to extend time to conduct foreclosure sale. But the thing I think is important that I want to declare here, because the Mellon Bank has lied like sailors, drunken sailors, is that the Mellon Bank said they've had nothing to do with this. But in every filing from 2002 to present, you will see that the New York NYCTL 1998-2 trust, and Bank of New York Mellon as collateral agent and custodian. I'm going to show you several other court filings indicating that the lawyers were representing the Mellon Bank, and they were indeed liable. Page number 9. I want to demonstrate the hatred that has been leveled against me and against this church over the years. The police documented hate crimes against Pastor Manning and the Bethelite Community Baptist Church. And as you can see, it has the ATLAH sign, and it has written there in the announcement board segment that God is gay. It says, I, James Manning, living in the Bethelite Community Baptist Church, ATLAH building, I was awakened in the middle of the night to the knocking on my door and to the screams of 20 white and black young people jumping across the church fence writing God is gay on the church's announcement board. I ran downstairs in my pajamas to see that they had jumped back over the fence, leaving the church. The police were contacted and they came. Please see the next page for the police report. And the next page, page number 10, is simply the police report. I want to document that we're not making these accusations unfounded. The police were called, they filed a report. Now, they should have filed this as a hate crime because it was. But in the bottom section of this report, the police give an explanation of what took place when they came and found our church vandalized, our church sign vandalized. We want to demonstrate to the court and to the jury, we're not just making these things up. We have suffered great injury. And the police have been called on several occasions of felonies that have been leveled against our church and against me personally. Page number 11, Mr. Engineer, is an article, a portion of an article that's found in the New York Times, that was filed in the New York Times. The title of that article is Unpaid Bills Bedevil Harlem Church, known for its outspoken pastor. And I write, according to the New York Times article titled Unpaid Bills Bedevil Harlem Church, known for its outspoken pastor by Sarah Maisler Neer, published on the 25th of February in 2016. The lien holder, the Bank of New York Mellon, was moving forward with a foreclosure auction until the church won the recent restraining order from Justice Barbara Jaffrey in State Supreme Court. The article reads, according to the New York Times, the stalled sale disappointed some of ATLAH's critics. Rivers of Living Water, a church in Manhattan that welcomes lesbians, gay, bisexual, and transgender members, and the Ali Forney Center, a homeless shelter in Manhattan for gay youths, among others, are both raising money to try to buy the church. We believe it would be divine justice. I quote by Vanessa Brown. We believe it would be divine justice. The pastor of the Rivers of Living Water said, for an affirming church to replace what has been an epicenter of gay hate and transform it into a center of love and light. Vanessa Brown and others, it's been 7 years, and you'll be here another 7,000 years before you get this building and parade your filth in this building. Item 45 on page number 12, Mr. Engineer. The Ali Forney Center in New York City Housing for Runaway LGBTQ Youth spokesman said in a small newspaper in New York City called The Advocate, the Ali Forney Center hits fundraising goal to buy Harlem Hate Church. This was published in a newspaper here in New York City. And I read what was published. According to the news website called The Advocate, article titled Ali Forney Center hits fundraising goal to buy Harlem Hate Church by Neil Broverman, published on the 9th of February in 2016. The Ali Forney and its leader, Carl Cesalano, hope to use their $200,000 to purchase the church when it goes up for sale in February, the 24th auction. Purchasing the church would serve as an important symbol for the Harlem LGBTQ community, Cesalano said. Ali Forney who inspired the founding of the organization, was murdered in Harlem in 1997, only 12 blocks from ATLAH. Cesalano said in a statement in 2013, Islam Nettles was beaten to death in Harlem, only 1 mile from ATLAH. Could there be a more just outcome to the ATLAH foreclosure than that the young LGBT people most endangered by the hatred and contempt Manning promotes would take over this building? You know, they're trying to say I'm the reason for the deaths. That's what they've done over the years and continue to do. I'm not responsible for those deaths. I preach the word of God. Page 13, Mr. Engineer. The New York Times, I'm writing this, the New York Times discriminatory article ridiculed and defamed Pastor James Manning for preaching the Holy Bible's commandments and led its readers to rejoice that the church was being foreclosed for water and sewer taxes. Now, it's important that we include this New York Times article. First of all, New York Times is valid. It will be evidence that will be entered in. It will be allowed in. It's a valid paper. Everybody knows that. And the writers are critical. Incredible, I should say. But what the New York Times article did that defamed me and denied me freedom of speech and freedom of religion is that it caused people to rejoice that we were being foreclosed. And you're going to hear the article in totality. Bringing a defamation suit against them would be very difficult. I know that. But I think they need to be marred in this process of what they have done, inciting a riot against this church, a riot of hatred against this church by the articles that they printed. As you can see in page 13, they've got a picture of the church. The pastor of the ATLAH Worldwide Church at West 123rd Street and Malcolm X Boulevard in Harlem is involved in a legal battle to save his red brick building from foreclosure. And this is the article written by Sarah Maslanier. She was here on several occasions in this building. Ask James L. Manning, the pastor of the ATLAH Worldwide Church, why is he involved in a legal battle to save his red brick building in Harlem from foreclosure? And he gives the same answer he employs when talking about many of the world's problems. And I quote, "It's primarily about my very vigorous opposition to the sodomy activity going on in this community," unquote, he said. Mr. Manning, who is known to post his thoughts on a giant signboard outside the church at West 123rd Street and Malcolm X Boulevard, has for years promoted his belief that certain parties carry out the devil's work. They include, but not limited to, gay people, whom Jesus would stone, they quote, President Barack, President Obama, Black Hitler, they quote, and immigrants, boycott them. The article goes on to say these views have long provoked neighbors and others, many of whom have staged protests outside the church. This is the New York Times article, and that's what she wrote. But Mr. Manning's latest battle centers on issues more prosaic than ideological. His church, according to New York City, has not paid its bills. Specifically, the church has never paid its water and sewer bills, according to the city's Department of Environmental Protection. Mr. Manning insists he has defaulted on purpose, based on his convictions that ATLAH should be allowed the same relief as other city religious institutions and not be required to pay for those services. He has fought the city for years on the matter, and most recently won a temporary halt on a foreclosure auction that had been scheduled for this week. Page 15, Mr. Engineer. James L. Manning, pastor of the ATLAH Church, has for years promoted his belief that certain parties carry out the devil's work. They include, but not limited to, gay people, President Obama, and immigrants. Published by Chang W. Lee in the New York Times. While news of threatened churches often elicits feelings of sympathy in the community, the struggles of ATLAH have been met with widespread glee. When hearing that the auction had been put off, State Assemblyman Keith L.T. Wright, a Democrat who represents the area side, And I quote, "Hopefully the Lord will find a way," he said. Still, his church travails have raised Mr. Manning's public profile. His sermons, which are streamed on the internet, have attracted large number of viewers, and he has appeared on The Daily Show. But the church's financial state also has served as a call to action for those who revile him. At least two gay advocacy groups have sought to buy the church in the event of foreclosure in an effort not just to obtain a valuable piece of property, but also to achieve a measure of divine retribution. According to court records, the church owes over $1 million. This was back in 2016, after a portion of the outstanding water bill was sold by the city as a lien to the Mellon Bank. The lien holder, the Mellon Bank, was moving forward with a foreclosure auction until church won a recent restraining order from Justice Barbara Jaffe, in the state Supreme Court. The news of the planned foreclosure auction was reported by DNA Info, another local online news website. I put out on the announcement board, "Fools trying to foreclose us will be defeated." This was back in 2016. Think of all the poor people of Harlem evicted by racist gentrifiers. This was posted by Brian Harking for the New York Times, and yet a separate article in the New York Times. The judge will hold a hearing in April when the church is to make its case as a tax-exempt institution. Stuart F. Shaw, a lawyer for the church, said, "The debt, the lien sale, and the foreclosure auction never should have happened," he said. Now I quote, "Besides providing worship services, ATLAH building includes a soup kitchen, a small homeless shelter, and a school with grades from kindergarten through high school. The stall sale disappointed some of ATLAH's critics. Rivers of Living Water, a church in Manhattan that welcomes lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender members, and the Alley Forney Center, a homeless shelter in Manhattan for gay youth, among others, are both raising money to try to buy the church." And again, the quote, "We believe it will be divine justice." Next paragraph. "Whether ATLAH does in fact owe the money is a question the court may have to answer. Religious or nonprofit groups can qualify for an exemption from New York City water and sewer bills after applying to the Department of Environmental Protection. Indeed, the church, which bought the building in the 1980s, has applied 5 times since 1991 and has been denied by the Department of Environmental Protection each time. According to Edward Timbers, a spokesman for the agency, that's Department of Environmental Protection. The reason given was that not all of the church building, which includes several residential apartments, was engaged in religious uses. And let me stop here. We applied, they denied, we took them to court, and we won. Judge Kornreich ordered that everything that happens in this building is all related to religious process of the building. That the super's apartment, the teacher's apartment, my apartment is incidental. You need that to run the ministry. What's this big deal about saying because somebody who lives in an apartment in the building is not exempt? Especially when it is clear that the federal tax exempted the entire building. New York City taxes, New York State, have exempted the entire building. These 2 apartments, they have been, and will not relent to this very day on giving us exemption for those 2 apartments where a teacher, a superintendent lives who works in the school. It's racist. Not only that, it's not racist, it's sexist. Mr. Manning, who said that he found God in prison, is a dapper dresser. He speaks with a booming voice. He strolls through the church, pastor, tipping balusters. Small children run up and smother him with hugs. He's open about his beliefs. And I quote, "Jesus is not about all this love that people say. He said in an interview in his church office, I quote again, "Jesus is the only one in the Bible speaking about sending anyone to hell. This business from the Sodomites about love and forgiveness is twisting of the scripture," unquote, of Pastor Manning. The church, which goes by several other names, including Bethelite Community Baptist Church, is saddled with other debts, according to the public database. It shows that Mr. Manning personally owes more than $25,000 in unpaid taxes to New York State, something he flatly denies, and I don't. Last year, the church was fined by the Landmarks Preservation Commission for several unapproved changes to its building, the exterior of which is designated as a landmark. It won't be much longer now, but I want you to fully understand where we are so we can all pray together and be on one accord as this matter moves through the courts. To Mr. Manning, all his troubles can be seen as an attempt to silence him. At issue, he says, is not the debt, but freedom of speech. And I quote, "We shouldn't be attacked," Manning being quoted, and I quote, "We shouldn't be attacked by the Landmarks Commission. We should not be attacked by this water bill," unquote. Again, a quote, "The world needs to know that people who do not support sodomy should have the freedom to reject it without prejudice," unquote. A version of this article appeared in the February 26, 2016, segment A, page 22 of the New York Times. The unpaid bills bedeviled church known for its outspoken pastor. Though there are a lot more pages, they're not as meaty with words, and we will conclude this shortly. The discriminatory and predatory water and tax lien sale was later assigned in 2018 to New York Supreme Court Judge Arlene Bluth. Now, I gave a listing of Arlene Bluth's accomplishments and professions. It says that she's a member of the New York Bar Leaders, Network of Bar Leaders, member of Network Bar Leaders, member of the New York County Lawyers, but also a member of the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Law Association of Greater New York, Incorporated. Arlene Bluth, to whom our case was assigned, is a member of the New York Bar Committee on Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Rights from 2002 to 2004, and some other listings as well of Justice Bluth. Page 20, Mr. Engineer. This discriminatory and predatory water and tax lien sale was assigned in 2020 to New York State Supreme Court Judge Francis A. Kahn III. A small local newspaper in Brooklyn called the Brooklyn Daily Eagle published this article. Gay Straight Alliance honors Justice Kahn with Lifetime Achievement Award. The Brooklyn Daily Eagle published an article titled Gay Straight Alliance honors Justice Kahn with this lifetime. There's a picture of Justice Kahn. These white forms that you're going to see from page 21 to 23 are police reports of rocks thrown through the stained glass windows and vandalism of our property. We're going to skip right through those. Page 21, Mr. Engineer, put page 22 up, quickly take it down. These are all police reports. We're validating this as documentation that we have been attacked viciously. Page 23, put up and take down. This is very important. Page 24. It has been clear since the recusal of Judge Barbara Jaffrey that our Pastor Manning have been discriminated against by extremely pro-LGBTQ judges. My strongly held religious beliefs have been in opposition to every New York Supreme Court judge before which I have appeared. It is also clear, were it not for my beliefs, my freedom of religion, my freedom of speech, in the whole Holy Bible, this case would have been rescued by the city of New York as utterly ridiculous that a serving church that saves the community, the city, as much as $2 million per year and educates and feeds children. The city otherwise would have to educate and feed those children themselves. that the church should be sold at auction to the $52 trillion Mellon Bank. Unbiased judges would have used their wide discretionary power to give relief to the church rather than the Mellon Bank, the $3.4 million, while devastating the Harlem community and many members of the church and the school. Any judge would have given us relief and told the Mellon Bank to take a walk, but no. And the hatred continues. Page 25, Mr. Engineer. Discrimination by the city of New York, Mayor Eric Adams. In August of 2022, we took our desperate protest to City Hall. We first made an appointment to protest. Then came the appointed day. While we were there for hours, neither Mayor Adams nor any city council official bothered to inquire of our plight. They completely ignored us. Surely had some other church or school children had come, they would have been given the courtesy of the mayor's assistant to demonstrate some fiduciary duty to the hurting citizens of New York. However, because of my religious beliefs, we were denied help, though we stood on the steps of City Hall for quite some time. We have published, and this is critical, children on the steps of City Hall, nobody comes out to ask what be the matter. We don't care. Now, the New York Times article, some of you have already read them. Page 26, Mr. Engineer, and page, as the Times article, our church is on death row. Page 27, again, our church is on death row. We're coming to a conclusion. Please be just a bit more patient with me, and I promise not to inflict myself upon you any further. Page 28, Mr. Engineer. Hate mail and death threats. In this segment, I will present actual photos and police reports of 4 or 5 physical attacks on our property inspired by the knowledge of the foreclosure. That is to say, I'm saying the foreclosure inspired people to deny me my civil rights, to deny me my freedom of speech, to deny me religious liberty. Were the foreclosure not there, these people would not have had a predicate upon which to do the things that they did. Verse number 60, you will observe most of the photos reference the foreclosure and make extremely ugly racist remarks about me and the school children. This is going to get a little gritty, a little bumpy, ugly, but it must be submitted. And I ask if any of you are offended by any of what's being said. I am quoting, and they say in literary circles, you have the right to quote. You can even say an F word in public if you're quoting what someone else has said. I'm not going to use that today, but I do want to ask you to let me quote what has taken place over the years in the attempt to take down our church building, our church and our ministry. Mr. Engineer, if you'll go to page 29. This is a fake article, but it looks real, from the Daily News. And it says, infamous hate pastor found dead after foreclosure. Found hanging from the church ceiling. The pastor of the ATLAH World Missionary Church in Harlem, James Manning, has long made headlines for his incendiary remarks against former President Barack Obama and vicious attacks on gays and lesbians. What has received less scrutiny, however, is the small private high school that Manning runs as part of the church. In a former students described an environment of fear in the school, shame, and psychological abuse at the school that was instigated and permeated by Manning. They said one former student reported being locked in a basement for days by Manning, and said he later became depressed and homeless Another student said that Manning told his family he was gay, caused him to be kicked out of his home. A former female student said that Manning harassed and sexually assaulted her when she was 18. She told Klein that the New York Police Department investigated but did not press charges. A spokesman for the New York Police Department declined to comment on the case when asked by WNYC Radio. Manning denies all these accusations of abuse and sexual misconduct, calling the Huffington Post report a hit job orchestrated against him by the LGBTQ mafia in response to his political beliefs. This is a hit job. That's all it is, Manning told NYC. Who in the hell is interested in 4 boys who don't have high school diplomas, and they're quoting, one of them not in college, not one of them in college, or married, don't have a job, Manning said. And referencing 4 former students mentioned in the Huffington Post article, who is interested in the story of 4 black boys in Harlem? What I'm saying, in Harlem, Bed-Stuy, and ghettos, black boys get kicked out of school routinely, and nobody ever reports it in the news because of their demeanor, their behavior. They're unwilling to learn. So my question is, why are y'all interested in these 4? You're not interested in the 4 that got kicked out of Martin Luther King for carrying a gun or cutting somebody. You're not interested in them. You're interested in these? By the way, I never locked anybody in the basement for 4 days. That's not true. This school does not have an atmosphere of fear or hatred. That's not true. That's not true. But they lied, and they printed the lies. I thought you need to know that. Anyway, who was interested that the story of the 4 black boys in Harlem, it's unclear how much oversight, responsibility state and city educators, officials have over private schools, religious schools, and whether they have been fulfilling. ATLAH has been able to, award New York State Regents diplomas, even though some state officials have not recently visited the school and observed this operation. Klein said that the state allows schools that have applied for registration, as ATLAH did in 2013, to administer Regents diplomas. Our school is not a hate school. That's not true. It's just not true. And it's sad that that will be published against us, but it's not going to hold us down. What I'm going to show you now, and we're going to get through this very quickly. We received in the last year 2 large envelopes containing hate mail. I'm going to show you the pictures, some of it very graphic, very racist, and very ugly. And I'm going to read, some of you perhaps who can't, sitting in the back region, will not be able to read what is being stated. But in page 30, it says James David Manning, ATLAH Ministries. And it was mailed from one of the nations in either in Sweden or Norway, Sweden, Norway, or Finland. I'm not sure which, I forget. Or at least that's what the postmark stated. And it has a picture of Lori Lightfoot. It said, Manning is a hate preacher. ATLAH ain't never gonna be no ATLAH. Look at what they said about me. Page 31. Ever heard Dr. Manning? Dr. James David Manning? You mean that crazy coon pastor up there in Harlem? Ha 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 ha. Then they got a picture of their beloved angelic, whatever this guy's name is, George Floyd. Mr. Engineer, bring us a picture. This is going to be a little bit graphic now, but I want you to see. This is just some of the stuff that we have not revealed to you. I prayed all last night and yesterday as to whether to actually bring this matter before you today. But I think you need to know. There's so many things that have been done that are so unjust against us by some of the most vile people that ever walked up on, right on planet Earth. Anyway, page 32. Some woman here, I don't know who this is. When we need money, pastor tells us to pray. When pastor needs money, he tells us to give. Move quickly, Mr. Stain, page 31. Another letter to James Manning. ATLAH foreclosure. It won't be long now. Page 34. I want the jury to see this. They've got Obama. They've got a picture of Sabbath saying, Lordy, Lordy. They got Elizabeth in jail. They've got written on this pulpit here, God is gay. They've got two black men standing in front of our pulpit altar kissing in a marriage ceremony. And the next page, which is very disturbing, next picture rather, very disturbing. They say, we nappy-headed hoes sure love bling bling. These are our daughters. These are your nieces. These are your students. This is how they feel about children. And they write, a couple of cheap trinkets from Sister Hunchback, they were talking about Sister Humphrey, will not save your church. There's more. Page 35. Please, Margaret Sanger. Now, if you don't know who she is, she's the woman who founded Planned Parenthood and the abortion and going into black neighborhoods and sterilizing black women. Margaret Sanger. Please, Margaret Sanger, we need you back. These creatures, now they're calling our children, you're talking about homosexual. You know, they're so homosexual, they're nice people. Oh, I don't necessarily agree with what they do, but they're nice people. They're calling our children creatures. These creatures urgently need a sterilization before they reach the breeding age. Below in the next photo, stop the ATLAH breakfast program. Feeding hammocks, well, that's my job. Another envelope mailed to me. We've gotten a lot of hate mail. I don't want to tell you some of the things that we've gotten, from dildos to buckets full of doo-doo, mailed to me, mailed to this church over the years from gay people. What do they say they are? The ATLAH Children's Breakfast Program. You would think people would be applauding that, right? No more free breakfast for you, you mooching Brillo head gollywags. Page 38. The president of Mellon Bank. You don't stand a chance against the mighty Mellon Bank. We crush cockroaches like you on a daily basis. And then, of course, it's got we shall not be moved. And a picture of the Vestals. Page 39, Mr. Engineer. Picture of Judge Bluth. God is dead, and so is your ATLAH. The battle is lost, Manning. Judge Khan. Judge Bluth, the cross is coming down. We'll smoke you out of that building if necessary, shenanigan Manning. Mr. Engineer, go directly to page 41. Y'all stand there for just a moment. I'm going to be through shortly. I am. In page 41, it says the Mellon Bank claims no responsibility. They lied. Or involvement in this foreclosure, this predatory land grab. We got a letter on the fourth day we were out at protesting in August. We got a letter from a lawyer for the Mellon Bank stating that they had nothing to do with this at all. Yet on every court document, their name is listed. What liars they are. Anyway, I've got a copy of that letter. We're going to present that to the court. The Mellon Bank segment, page 42. The Mellon Bank is an enabler and execution of the New York City tax lien and predatory laws that all the state officials and city officials and attorney generals have stated. The Mellon Bank is the last act of the discriminatory, predatory, and unjust tax lien created by the city of New York. The opening segment clearly, truthfully, and undeniably proves that before this court, that the law is predatory. The Mellon Bank is the jailer and the executioner of the discriminatory, racist, predatory, and unjust law. The following pages will testify to the Mellon Bank denying their predatory involvement. The numerous court records demonstrated they were the executioner of the tax law. Moreover, pages will show how they tried to hide their hands by creating a phony trust company to shield them from exposure. Following will be pictures of the church protesting for 5 days in front of the Mellon Bank in August of 2022. At the protest, our children pleaded for mercy to save our church and school. The Mellon Bank denied any involvement in the foreclosure. Therefore, our suit will seek $23 million separately from the Mellon Bank and $23 million from the New York NYC TL 1998 Trust, $1 million for each year for violation of my civil rights. We will ask for 18% interest starting from 2002 of the date they purchased the lien from the New York City Department of Finance. Page 43, Mr. Engineer, quickly, then move to page 44. These are all pages indicating Mellon Bank has been on every legal document from day one. They lied and said they were not. Page 46, page 47, page 48, page 49, each indicate the Mellon Bank. Page 50, Mr. Engineer. A little bit of celebration in front of the Mellon Bank this summer. I think that was on August the 15th, our first day there. Page 51, Mr. Engineer. The church protested for 5 days pleading for mercy in front of the Mellon Bank. Second part of that page, the church protested 5 days, okay. The second half, that my standing in front of the Mellon Bank. It was a great summer, by the way. The church protested again in front of the Mellon Bank on page 52. And the last day of our protest, page 52, bottom section, Mr. Engineer, was our foot washing and anointing and my little dance in front of the Mellon Bank. Some of y'all will remember. We're just about complete. And my complaint is this, my civil rights. Religious liberty denied, page 53. The man hours, and we need to add the word that, were spent fighting this discriminatory, predatory, unjust law, denied me the time to serve the community, visit the sick, visit the prison, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and house the homeless. So many on crack, heroin, and hate I could have reached. The man hours are enormous and can be totaled as man years. The man years of personal service can never be, personal service lost can never be replaced. The souls that suffered were robbed of pastoral comfort, much needed counsel, and physical food, and life-giving help. I felt and now feel imprisoned by this discriminatory, predatory, and unjust tax lien nightmare. The pain of the attack was physical and unrelenting. The mental anguish and spiritual torment as the threat of losing our church building, our school building, our personal home was a constant I cannot get over. The threat of a $36,000 lien, now $3.4 million. We lose more than $10 million in equity and generational wealth should we lose this building. The foreclosure from the unjust tax lien has been a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week constant on my mind. I have not had a good night's sleep, a joyous Christmas, nor a restful vacation in 22 years. The public embarrassment, many groups in the community and the local media rooting for our defeat has been because of our strong and unflinching belief in the Word of God. My freedom attacked. According to the New York Times article titled Unpaid Bills Bedeviled Harlem Church, known for its outspoken pastor by Sarah Maisler-Neer, published on the 25th of February, 2016, while news of threatened churches often elicit feelings of sympathy in the community, the struggles of ATLAH have been met with widespread glee when hearing of the auction that had been put off. State Assemblyman Keith L. Wright, a Democrat who represents the area side. Hopefully the Lord will find a way. In an interview with the New York Times, Assemblyman from my district prayed our church will be shut down. The New York State Harlem Assemblyman, the New York Times, and others in great political and judicial powers have denied me the freedom to preach the word of Jesus and the Apostle Paul. They have rallied the community to condemn me for my divinely appointed profession. The New York State Assembly prays that the discriminatory, predatory, unjust tax lien can be used as a weapon to silence me. I will not be silent. The U.S. Constitution screams I do not have to be silent, but rather declares that those who demand my silence be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The numerous violations of my civil rights, as demonstrated in the statements made by the New York Attorney General Letitia James, Mayor Eric Adams, City Council President Adrian Adams. The tax lien sold to the Mellon Bank created and sustained numerous violations of my civil rights, my freedom of speech, my freedom of religion, my pursuit of happiness, the numerous death threats associated with the foreclosure, the promotion of my death for suffering foreclosure, the numerous racist attacks against our children associated with the foreclosure tax lien sale is clear, tormenting, and constantly painful. My legal battle, paying lawyers and other expenses over 20 years is more than $700,000. My loss of income over 22 years will be above $1 million. Therefore, I'm asking the court to award $23 million, $1 million for each year from New York City, and what, if any, other amounts the courts would award. I asked the court to award from the Mellon Bank $23 million, $1 million for each year, plus any other awards the court may grant. I asked the court to award from the NYC 1998-2 trust, and we got to correct that typo, $23 million plus 18% interest starting from the year 2002 till present. And this will be a total of more than $70 million all total from all agencies. And what are the other punitive damages that we're going to ask for on behalf of the racist, ugly remarks made about our children? I'm going to make the case before the court that our children have seen these and they are scarred by what people think about them, that they're nappy head hoes, that they're this or that they're that. I'm going to ask for punitive damages for that as well. And so this, my friends, is the case that I will present. There was other evidence that we did not include. I didn't want to overwhelm the court with the things that have happened over the years. But we believe that we have a very strong case. We are praying that the federal judges and others will honor this case and allow it to go forward. And again, I'm going to prosecute the case. I just don't have faith in lawyers anymore. The courts can offer them a greater career than serving me. And the Mellon Bank can offer them, not the courts, but the city of New York. The Mellon Bank can offer them money that I cannot. And I believe at this time that will be the right thing for me to do. And I'll ask God for the wisdom. Now, I want to thank God for a legal team. I don't want you to think I did this by myself. We put together a legal team that have been meeting over the past couple of months, or at least a month or so. One of the members, of course, as you know, is Attorney Flannery, law student Esther Butler, Jatira Butler as well, and Elder LaFleur, also a part of that team, Elizabeth Manning, a part of that team, and the communications officer, Captain LaFleur, Isaiah LaFleur. And we have been working. I want to thank God that they are willing, because I was sending out a month ago at 4 o'clock in the morning additions to what I thought should happen and revisions and so forth. So they haven't had very much sleep. I was concerned about reading this morning. The marshals will serve Mayor Adams. They'll serve Robin Vincent. They will serve them. They have not been served yet. But after I filed this on yesterday, I felt a relief I haven't felt in many years. I just felt a burden had been taken away. We walked into that federal building yesterday, Elder LaFleur and I, a very trusty assistant. And the clerk was very generous, helped us in ways in which, and I left this there with them. And I've not felt this good about anything in a very long time. I've not felt this free. And I thank God for the wisdom to have put this together. I don't see where they're going to go. Now, I know they're going to come with a lot of different laws and angles and one thing after the other. All I'm asking for, I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to be one, though, by 2025. All I'm asking for is an opportunity to stand in that court and question Mayor Eric Adams, put him on the stand and ask him questions. Question the president of the Mellon Bank, if I can get him on stand, or depose him before going to court. And then finally, let me stand in that courtroom and talk to the jury. Yes. We may walk away with $100 million when I finish this process. I don't know that, I mean, there are all kinds of things that happen in courtrooms. But these people are vicious. I've only preached God's word. To say the things about this school and about me, as you've heard, they said them about you. And you know that's how people see us. I'm not a hate preacher. Praise the Lord. Thank you for your time of listening to me today. Let's all pray. I need to prepare you as this case moves forward. There are people that are gangsters. The Mellon Bank hires gangsters, hitmen, intimidators, bribes. You may be offered a bribe. I got a call Friday night from someone who said, they know you're coming. We hadn't even, Thursday night, they know you're coming. I hadn't filed, nor had I told anybody. He said, they know you're coming. We need to get ready for what's going to happen. You take on the city of New York and the Mellon Bank at the level we're taking, and it just isn't the money for them because they don't really care about that. They'll spend the city's money, and Mayor Adams give you $23 million in the city and not even think about it. It's the reputation. It's what this will do publicly that they are afraid of. I'm not going to further discuss this with everybody in the church. I don't know who's weak and who will sell out. Because they're coming. They're going to contact you. They're going to talk to your children. You've seen what they do. You saw what Trump did when he tried to maintain his election process. The church needs to get ready for the fight that lies ahead of us. But we're going to win. No, we're going to win this battle. Thank you all so very much again. Time for the tithe and the offering. Mr. Engineer, there you go. Bring up the CashApp. Thank y'all for giving. Thanks, Sister Millie Biswas over in London. purchasing $250 worth of silver from the Bethel Marketplace. Thank all of you for giving, help us maintain our ministry. We've been able to survive the winter, the exorbitant fuel cost. Thank God spring is coming. And thank God for people like Minister Honaker, who, when they heard that our children were going on a ski trip, didn't get an attitude. What them children from Holland doing going on a ski trip? But sent a gift so the children could go on a ski trip. And we're going to Rome. I met with the Vestas on yesterday briefly. I want to say this to you. Can I say this? Can I just get your attention for just a moment? Right now, you don't know anybody, including your own children, many of which will rip you off, steal from you, lie on you, and send you to the poorhouse if you don't keep a close eye on them. But nobody you know now deserves giving to them more than we do. We got a fight on our hands. I may need to hire private detectives. I don't know. I may need to see who judges are meeting with. I don't know. But the next 7 months are going to be very difficult. There's nobody, not even your children, and many of them should be on their own. You should give every dime you get. When you see what they said about our children, about Genesis, about what's that elder capital for his daughter, Zipporah. Been a long day. When you see what they said about our children, you see what they think about Jesus. Any dollar, any dime you have belongs here. Your children support. There are probably many of your family members who are waiting to hear, is the church sold yet? And they're going to start rejoicing. You have no fellowship with them. And not have fellowship with me. And can I trust you? I'm not going down. This church is not going down. I'm not going to be silent. I'm not going to shut up. But what I don't want are hypocrites who want to sit in here and let people lie on us. It's not right. I've done no wrong. I preach God's word. I've done no wrong. You know me. You see me for years. Don't be a hypocrite. If you got something, I need it. I need it. This ain't gonna be easy. I may even have to hire some attorneys to sit with me and just give me that procedure. I've talked to a couple, two I've talked to about, you just sit in there, so they say something I don't understand. You see what I'm saying? All right. The tithe and offering is in order. The elder's on the floor. I was out walking the elder. He got his cowboy boots today. I was out walking him. He was amazed. I'm going upstairs. I don't know what I'm having for lunch. Maybe a bologna sandwich, but it's okay. I'm good. Praise the Lord. All right, I'll sit down for just a moment. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Elizabeth. Bennett's a part of the, she's our editor, our proofreader of the legal team. I'm very sorry, Bennett. It's been a long week. But Esther Bennett is our proofreader. By the way, we got several typos that are already, we want to correct those. The clerk said we could amend this at any time we so choose. So thank you, Bennett, for your contributions, and thank all of our for taking the time to work with me on this project. Praise the Lord. And to everybody else, I suppose we can just say, if you've given your gifts, I think Mr. Honaker dropped a new song. Now, I understand the Guzmans have a new song. I haven't dropped it because I want to drop it. They said they're going to give some video to it. It's a bad mamma jamma, as their songs are. But I ain't never heard Guzman as poetic and melodious as he is on this one. I don't want to try to upstage his wife, 12. I don't want to make her feel bad. But I think he upstaged her. I think he's singing better. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get in trouble. It's just like, Pastor Man is starting a fight between a husband and a wife. That's why I don't like him. See, he started a fight. Because people just got married a couple years ago, and now he's starting a fight between the two, talking about the husband upstage the wife. Anyway, we'll drop it when they drop it. Mr. Engineer, take us to the top with Honaker. And More Than a Friend.
But I want you to know that I only knew back then. But I want you to know you'll be more than